The air is thick with dust and history, a quiet that seems almost unnatural, as if the world itself holds its breath in this forgotten corner of time. Shadows stretch across the crumbling walls of a long-abandoned building, sunlight seeping in only through cracks and broken windows, painting patterns on the cold stone floors. Every surface seems to whisper secrets, the faint imprint of hands that once touched them, the echo of voices that have long since faded. Here, in this silent, hidden chamber, time has paused, leaving behind only fragments of a world that existed nearly 2 millennia ago. It is said that this place was once the sanctum of the extraordinary, a workshop where a secret was carefully crafted, one that would serve not just the vanity of royalty, but a power that could shape the destiny of a kingdom. Among the layers of dust lies a story so intimate and dangerous that it was hidden deliberately, sealed away from all but a chosen few. Cleopatra, the queen whose name still resonates across centuries, is said to have entrusted a portion of her legacy to this chamber, a creation so rare, so enigmatic, that its existence has long been questioned by historians. Imagine the royal corridors of Alexandria, alive with murmurs of politics and intrigue, the scent of perfumes and incense thick in the air, and in the quietest corner of that grandeur, a craftsman works under flickering candlelight. His hands, calloused and precise, move rhythmically, shaping something more than fabric and thread. It is not merely a garment, it is a statement, a symbol woven from the hide of a bear, a creature whose raw strength mirrors the queen's own relentless ambition. Every stitch carries the weight of loyalty, secrecy, and fear. Each movement is calculated, not for speed or efficiency, but to maintain the utmost discretion, for discovery could mean disgrace, or death. The chamber itself seems almost alive, its walls lined with hidden compartments and mechanisms designed to conceal the work within. There is a tension here, palpable and electric, as though the very stones are complicit in the secrecy they shelter. Light plays tricks on the eyes, casting fleeting shadows that could be figures, could be nothing at all. And yet, for those who dared to enter, the room demanded attention, commanding both reverence and fear. One could almost hear the whispers of the past, the cautious footsteps of those who had carried the queen's will into this secret space, and the silent promise of betrayal that lingered like smoke in the corners. No one could have known that centuries later, people would return to search for these secrets, drawn by curiosity, obsession, or the allure of the unknown. The chamber waits still, untouched and unresolved, guarding the intimate story of Cleopatra's bearskin dress, a story of craftsmanship, power, and peril, frozen in time. The question hangs in the air, tantalizing and unresolved: how could such a simple object hold such extraordinary significance? And who, in the shadowed past, decided that this secret was worth more than life itself? A faint silhouette appears at the edge of the doorway, indistinct and flickering with the light of the setting sun. The figure steps forward, hesitant, almost reverent, and the camera, our eyes, lingers, straining to see more. The chamber holds its breath. Outside, the world moves on, unaware of the whispers trapped inside. Inside, time and history converge in a suspended moment of mystery, beckoning us to follow further, to uncover what has been hidden for nearly 2,000 years, and to witness the delicate intersection of ambition, artistry, and danger that Cleopatra herself once commanded. To understand the secret of the lost chamber, one must first step into the world of Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, whose life was as intoxicating and perilous as the Nile at flood. Alexandria, her city, was a dazzling labyrinth of marble streets, towering columns, and temples that caught the light in ways that made the gods themselves seem envious. Markets thrived with exotic goods from across the known world, silks from the east, spices that perfumed the air, and jewelry that sparkled like captured sunlight. Yet behind this splendor lay a court rife with intrigue, where alliances shifted like sand, and even the most trusted confidants could become enemies overnight. Every choice was a gamble, every whisper a potential threat, and Cleopatra, young yet sharp beyond her years, navigated it all with a mixture of charm, intellect, and ruthless ambition. Her fascination with appearances went beyond vanity. Cleopatra understood that power was not only wielded through armies or decrees but through perception, through the image she projected. The way she dressed, the colors she wore, the textures against her skin, all of it was part of a calculated message. Her bearskin dress was not merely clothing, it was a symbol, a secret language embedded in every fiber, a display of strength and mystery that spoke to those who knew how to read it. To the uninitiated, it was beautiful, decadent, irresistible. To the initiated, it conveyed authority, danger, and an unspoken promise: the queen sees everything, and she trusts no one completely. Yet the creation of such a garment was no simple task. Egypt's finest artisans and craftsmen were summoned under strict secrecy. These men and women, often nameless in the historical record, worked in dimly lit rooms, aware that a single misstep could mean disgrace, or worse. They were bound not just by contracts or fear of the royal hand but by a strange combination of loyalty, awe, and terror. Their lives, their reputations, were entwined with the queen's ambitions, and their work carried stakes far higher than the mere crafting of a dress. Each hide chosen, each stitch sewn, had to meet the queen's exacting standards, for she demanded perfection and would brook no mistakes. The court itself was a theater of subtle menace. Cleopatra's advisors and rivals watched one another with hawk-like scrutiny. Every smile could hide a dagger, every compliment a hidden insult. Diplomats arrived bearing gifts from Rome, their intentions layered with duplicity. Cleopatra had to project confidence even in the face of betrayal, and her wardrobe became an extension of her strategy. The bearskin dress, in particular, had a dual purpose: to enthrall and to intimidate, to mesmerize allies while subtly warning enemies that the queen's power was both seductive and untouchable. Imagine, then, the clandestine nights in the hidden workshop where the dress was brought to life. Candlelight flickered against stone walls, casting long, quivering shadows. Craftsmen moved in silence, their hands guided by centuries-old techniques passed down through secret lineages. The air smelled of oils, tanned hides, and incense, a combination that made the room feel both sacred and dangerous. Occasionally, a royal attendant would peek through a hidden panel, ensuring that the work remained concealed, the queen's privacy inviolable. Here, in this small chamber, history was being written stitch by stitch, not in ink, but in the tangible, dangerous intimacy of creation. The tension in these nights was not merely physical. It was psychological, threaded into every interaction. Whispered instructions were given, hesitations corrected with sharp gestures, and every decision carried weight far beyond the present moment. The artisans were aware that their labor could alter the balance of power within the palace itself. A single flaw, a misplaced symbol, or a visible weakness could be exploited by Cleopatra's rivals, unraveling not just the garment but the delicate network of influence she had so carefully spun. And yet, despite the pressure, they worked with an artistry and devotion that bordered on obsession, understanding that what they created was more than a dress, it was a legacy. Even as the dress took shape, the palace outside hummed with intrigue. Senators debated in hushed tones, soldiers whispered of Rome's ambitions, and Cleopatra's own family navigated shifting loyalties. The queen's gaze, sharp and calculating, was never far from the chamber. It was said that she could sense the heartbeat of her city, the tension of her court, and the intentions of her servants with an almost supernatural perception. Every detail of the bearskin dress, from its weight to its sheen, was scrutinized under her vigilant eyes, for this was a garment meant to be both shield and weapon, an armor of image in a world where perception often equaled survival. By the end of the day, the dress was no longer just a garment. It had become a statement, a testament to the cunning, ambition, and artistry of a queen and those who served her. Yet for all its beauty and power, the dress, and the chamber where it was made, remained hidden from the eyes of history, lost to time, waiting silently for the moment when the story would finally surface. The question lingers, tantalizing and unresolved: what secrets did the bearskin dress hold? And who, in the shadowed corridors of Cleopatra's court, knew more than they dared reveal? The bearskin dress was unlike anything the world had seen before, a garment that straddled the line between artistry and enigma. It was not merely a display of wealth, nor simply a token of the queen's taste for the exotic. It was a carefully constructed symbol, each detail chosen with precision to convey a message that few could read, and even fewer dared to challenge. The hide itself, thick and dark, carried a raw, primal strength, the kind that reminded all who gazed upon it of the untamed forces of nature. It spoke of power, resilience, and dominance, yet there was an elegance, a subtlety woven into every fiber, that softened its ferocity with undeniable allure. Historians and archaeologists have long debated the origins of the bear whose hide was used. Bears were not common in Egypt, and the hunt itself would have required connections and influence, suggesting that even before the dress was stitched, it was a statement of reach and authority. The hunt, no doubt, was dangerous, undertaken in secret by men loyal to the queen, skilled in both tracking and discretion. The animal, once felled, was skinned and treated with oils and herbs to preserve its texture and sheen, a meticulous process that could take weeks. Every stage of preparation was shrouded in secrecy, each step a reminder that the final creation was more than clothing, it was a declaration. The dress was then entrusted to the most skilled craftsmen, artisans whose expertise extended beyond the physical construction to include the embedding of meaning into the very material itself. Every seam, every stitch, was intentional. Hidden within the folds and lining were symbols only the queen and her inner circle could interpret, subtle motifs that referenced ancient deities, coded patterns that hinted at political alliances, and delicate embellishments that suggested warnings to those who might betray her. This was a garment designed to communicate silently, a cloak of both protection and intimidation, a visual language that demanded careful reading. Yet the artistry of the dress was not confined to its symbolism. Its design had to accommodate movement, to drape and flow in a way that accentuated the queen's presence while maintaining an air of untouchable authority. The hide was soft to the touch, almost paradoxically so given its raw origins, and the weight of it lent gravity to every step Cleopatra took. When she wore it, she did not merely move through a room, she commanded it, transforming even the most familiar spaces into stages for her power and intellect. Observers described the effect as hypnotic, a mixture of awe and unease, as if the queen and her attire were inseparable entities, each amplifying the other's dominance. Scholars suggest that the dress may have served multiple secret purposes beyond ceremony or display. The embedded motifs were possibly warnings to political rivals, coded signals to allies, or even markers of royal succession, messages hidden in plain sight, meant to be understood only by those trained to see them. The artisans who worked on it would have known the gravity of their task. One misplaced stitch could distort the intended message, altering the perception of Cleopatra's authority. In this sense, the bearskin dress was as much a political tool as a work of art, a delicate balance of aesthetics, symbolism, and strategy. The secrecy surrounding the dress extended even to its storage and transport. When not in use, it was kept in a hidden chamber, carefully guarded and accessed only by a select few. Some records hint at the presence of coded locks, false doors, and secret compartments designed to mislead anyone attempting to uncover it. The chamber itself, shrouded in shadow and mystery, was almost a character in the story, a silent witness to the ambitions and fears of those who created and protected the dress. It was in these quiet, hidden spaces that the tension surrounding the dress reached its peak, where loyalty and betrayal coexisted in fragile balance. For modern observers, the bearskin dress has become a tantalizing symbol of the queen's genius and her relentless control over her image. Every fragment, every reconstruction, invites questions that remain unanswered. What messages were encoded within its stitches? Who truly understood their significance? And how did a simple object, a piece of clothing, come to hold such immense weight in the treacherous world of Alexandria's royal court? The dress itself seems to whisper these questions, teasing historians and dreamers alike, a reminder that some secrets, though carefully concealed, are never entirely lost. As the candlelight would have flickered across the workshop walls centuries ago, illuminating the careful hands of artisans, the bearskin dress emerged as both beauty and enigma. It was a masterpiece forged in shadow, a testament to human skill, political acumen, and the enduring power of secrecy. And yet, even in its creation, one truth remained undeniable: this dress was never meant for the ordinary eye. It was meant to command, to mesmerize, and to protect a secret that, for nearly 2,000 years, has eluded discovery. The lost chamber was not simply a room, it was a labyrinth of secrecy, a hidden sanctuary where the ordinary rules of the palace seemed to fade into shadows. Located deep beneath the polished floors of Alexandria, it had been carefully concealed behind false walls and hidden passages, known only to a select few. The corridor leading to it twisted and narrowed, forcing those who entered to bow, to move cautiously, their footsteps echoing unnaturally against stone that had not felt human weight for centuries. Every step seemed deliberate, as if the chamber itself demanded respect, acknowledging that it was not just a space but a keeper of forbidden knowledge, a silent witness to power, ambition, and treachery. The walls were lined with hidden compartments, each carved with precision, some large enough to hold delicate artifacts, others just deep enough to hide messages or implements. Candlelight, flickering in the hands of a cautious intruder, would reveal glimpses of these recesses, a folded scroll here, a small tool there, the occasional glimmer of gold reflecting in the shadows. Each object suggested a story untold, fragments of a world where every detail carried weight. Craftsmen had worked here for years, often under the constant vigilance of royal attendants, creating not just the dress but an entire environment designed for secrecy. The chamber was more than a workshop, it was a fortress of intellect, artistry, and caution. The air within the chamber was thick, heavy with centuries of hidden labor, a mixture of tanned hides, oils, and the faint trace of incense used to mask the smell of work and to preserve the materials. The scent was both comforting and unsettling, a sensory reminder that this was a place of creation and a space of power. It was here that the bearskin dress came to life, stitch by meticulous stitch, under the careful watch of artisans who understood the stakes. Each movement had to be precise, each gesture purposeful, for even a minor error could compromise the queen's image, or worse, reveal a secret that had been intended to remain unseen. Despite the grandeur of the palace above, the chamber had an oppressive intimacy. Its low ceilings and narrow passages encouraged whispering, not shouting. Shadows clung to the corners, and any unexpected sound seemed amplified, creating an ever-present tension. Craftsmen and attendants alike navigated this space with a mixture of reverence and fear. Loyalty here was not a guarantee of safety, even those sworn to the queen could fall victim to jealousy, ambition, or a misinterpreted action. Trust was a fragile commodity, and the chamber's very design reinforced that reality. False panels, secret compartments, and concealed exits ensured that only those with knowledge and courage could navigate it safely. The chamber's location, far from the public eye, also made it a strategic vantage point for observing the political undercurrents of the court without being seen. Through narrow peepholes and hidden openings, attendants could monitor movement in the halls above, noting visitors, deliveries, or unexpected guests. Every detail mattered. A misplaced servant could compromise secrecy, a careless word could reach the wrong ears. Cleopatra understood the power of controlled information, and the chamber's architecture reflected that understanding. It was as much a tool of surveillance as it was of creation, a physical embodiment of her meticulous control over the royal narrative. Historical fragments suggest that the chamber may have witnessed more than artistry. Accounts speak of quiet confrontations, of whispered threats, and of alliances brokered in shadow. The craftsmen, though devoted, were not immune to fear or ambition. Some reportedly vanished under mysterious circumstances, their absences leaving faint traces, a tool left behind, a half-finished stitch, a faint smear of ink on a hidden note. Each loss was a reminder of the stakes, a chilling warning that the chamber was as dangerous as it was sacred. Even those closest to the queen could be ensnared in its subtle traps, their fates intertwined with the secrets it protected. The chamber's design was ingenious. It contained multiple layers of deception, false walls to mislead intruders, hidden compartments to store messages or fragments of the dress, and secret passages to ensure escape or concealment. Some compartments were so small they could only be accessed by those with knowledge of the queen's coded signals, hidden marks, or whispered instructions. Each detail reflected a careful balance between artistry and utility, secrecy and function, indicating that the chamber was not merely a workshop but a reflection of Cleopatra's intellect, a space where trust, skill, and danger converged. Even today, archaeologists and historians can only speculate about the full layout. Partial sketches and fragmented records hint at intricate tunnels, hidden staircases, and rooms beyond rooms, each more secretive than the last. The chamber seems to defy conventional measurement, an architectural puzzle designed to obscure as much as to reveal. And yet, despite the centuries, the essence of its purpose remains unmistakable. This was where the Queen's ambitions took form, where her image and power were carefully crafted in tangible, meticulous ways, and where danger always lurked in the shadows. It is here, in this silent, almost sacred place, that the story of Cleopatra's bearskin dress reaches a critical juncture. The artisans labored under extreme pressure, aware that every stitch was scrutinized, every symbol a potential message of warning or allegiance. The chamber itself seemed complicit, a space that amplified both the creative brilliance and the perilous tension of its inhabitants. As the light flickers across the stone walls and shadows dance in the corners, one can almost sense the silent agreements, the whispered betrayals, and the fragile trust that made such a secret endeavor possible. Yet, even as the chamber safeguarded the creation of the dress, it could not shield its occupants from the human impulses of ambition and fear. Somewhere within these walls, a betrayal was quietly taking shape, the consequences of which would echo through history. The chamber waits silently, holding its secrets close, daring anyone who discovers it to unravel the story. The question remains, tantalizing and unresolved: who among the Queen's inner circle would betray her trust, and what would they risk to possess, or destroy, the secret contained within these hidden walls? The craftsmen of Cleopatra's court were more than skilled hands, they were the unseen architects of power, bound to the Queen's ambitions by loyalty, fear, and the silent understanding that their work carried consequences far beyond the tangible. Their names are mostly lost to history, yet their lives, woven into the shadows of the palace, were as vivid and fragile as the delicate stitches they created. Each day in the hidden chamber was a test of skill, endurance, and nerve, for the smallest misstep could unravel not just a garment but the fragile trust upon which their lives depended. Among them was Ammonius, a man whose fingers had shaped leather and silk since boyhood. He had seen apprentices come and go, some dismissed, others disappearing entirely without explanation. Ammonius understood the delicate balance between obedience and self-preservation. He spoke rarely, observing more than he acted, and every motion of his hands carried the precision of decades of practice. Yet behind his calm exterior lay a storm of anxiety. Each stitch he placed into the bearskin dress was a silent gamble, a question of whether the Queen's scrutiny or the jealousy of a colleague would be his undoing. Beside him worked Menes, younger and more impulsive, whose talent for intricate decoration was matched only by his curiosity. Menes often lingered too long on the embellishments, tracing patterns with a reverent touch, as if the symbols themselves whispered secrets he alone could hear. His fascination bordered on obsession, and it was clear to Ammonius and the others that Menes' mind wandered beyond the craft to the meaning behind it. He speculated about hidden messages, codes embedded in the folds of the hide, and the ominous power the dress seemed to convey. But speculation in the chamber was dangerous. Every thought expressed could be overheard, every misstep noted. Silence was protection, curiosity could be peril. The chamber was a crucible of quiet tension. The air smelled faintly of tanned hides, oils, and incense, but also of fear. Craftsmen moved like shadows, their gestures deliberate, their conversations muted to whispers, often conducted in codes or gestures that could not be understood by the uninitiated. Occasionally, a royal attendant would peek through a secret panel, observing, recording, ensuring that no mistake went unnoticed. The craftsman's world was a mixture of reverence and anxiety, their skill was demanded, their discretion enforced. Even those with loyalty to Cleopatra could feel the weight of potential betrayal pressing at the edges of the chamber. Each artisan bore their own private fears. Some had families, dependent upon their wages, and yet were required to prioritize secrecy over security. Others harbored ambitions of advancement, understanding that mastery in this secret chamber could elevate them, or that a single act of disobedience could end everything. The psychological pressure was immense. A wrong stitch, a misaligned symbol, a careless glance could shift the course of a royal plan, and the consequences, though rarely recorded, were whispered in hushed tones: demotion, exile, even death. These men and women were artists and political instruments simultaneously, navigating a space where loyalty, skill, and survival were inseparable. Despite this constant pressure, the artisans found moments of quiet solidarity. Ammonius would sometimes exchange a subtle nod with Menes, acknowledging their shared responsibility. They were aware that the queen's vision depended upon their ability to work in tandem, to maintain secrecy, and to execute with perfection. Every stitch was a conversation with history, every cut a negotiation with destiny. The bearskin dress was not merely clothing, it was a silent declaration, a message that communicated more than words ever could. And in their hands, it became alive, each detail infused with meaning, danger, and beauty. Yet danger always lurked beyond the chamber's walls. Courtiers whispered in corridors, and envoys from Rome observed Alexandria with watchful eyes. The artisans were aware that their work could be intercepted, misinterpreted, or stolen. It was not paranoia, it was reality. Cleopatra's enemies were not only political rivals but sometimes members of her own court, drawn by ambition or resentment. And so, each artisan moved with caution, guarding not only the queen's secret but their own. Even the smallest act, a dropped tool, a smudged symbol, a fleeting glance, could carry consequences far greater than they imagined. Among the artisans, stories circulated of colleagues who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Some were found days later, broken, their hands stained not only with dye or oil but with the residue of treachery. Others were never seen again, leaving behind only whispered rumors and half-finished pieces of their craft. These stories haunted the living, serving as cautionary tales that reinforced the need for absolute discretion. In this chamber, history was created quietly, but it was also a battlefield where loyalty and fear intertwined, shaping every decision and movement. Ammonius often reflected on the irony of their situation: they were immortalized through the queen's power, yet condemned to obscurity. The bearskin dress was more than an opulent garment, it was a vessel for secrets, a silent archive of messages meant to be read only by those who knew the queen intimately. Each stitch, each hidden motif, carried meaning beyond mere decoration. Symbols were woven into the lining, subtle enough to escape casual observation but deliberate enough to convey warnings, allegiance, and power to the discerning eye. Cleopatra understood that true authority was as much about perception as action, and the dress was her instrument, a tool of influence, intimidation, and control, cloaked in beauty. Historians now theorize that the artisans who created the dress were guided not only by the queen's instructions but by secret codes passed down through generations, ancient symbols that spoke to the elite of Egypt's court. Some patterns echoed the shapes of royal sigils, referencing past pharaohs and asserting continuity of power. Others were warnings to enemies, small motifs indicating betrayal, loyalty, or the presence of spies. To the untrained eye, these were mere embellishments, ornamental flourishes that added texture and elegance. But in truth, the dress functioned as a silent conversation, its threads a language of intrigue and hidden threats. Within the hidden chamber, tension thickened with every careful stitch. Craftsmen like Ammonius and Menes worked under the constant pressure of understanding not just the physical form but the symbolic content of their labor. Misplacing a stitch or misaligning a symbol could distort the message entirely, and such a mistake could be catastrophic. Every line, every curve, was calculated to communicate precise meaning, there was no room for error. The chamber echoed with the quiet intensity of this responsibility, the weight of secrecy pressing down on the artisans' shoulders as heavily as the hides they manipulated. Outside the chamber, Cleopatra's court teemed with intrigue. Political rivals watched one another with hawk-like vigilance, alliances shifted with subtle gestures, and the whispers of envoys from Rome carried intentions both hidden and overt. Cleopatra's dress became a silent participant in this theater, a means to influence perception without uttering a single word. Allies could glean favor through subtle recognition of the coded motifs, while rivals could be warned, threatened, or subtly undermined. The dress was a chess piece in a game where miscalculation could mean ruin, and the artisans who created it were both players and pawns in this delicate, perilous dance. Some of the codes within the dress remain undeciphered to this day. Tiny patterns resembling hieroglyphics, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, hint at secret pacts, hidden agendas, and messages intended for a select few. Scholars suggest that certain symbols may have conveyed the Queen's intentions regarding succession, military maneuvers, or alliances with foreign powers. The artisans, aware of these stakes, understood that the power of the dress extended far beyond aesthetics. It was a living record of political strategy, encoded in materials meant to outlast generations. The tension inside the chamber was mirrored in the human dynamics among the artisans. Mini's curiosity often drew him dangerously close to questions better left unasked, while Ammonius maintained a steady vigilance, ensuring that the codes were rendered precisely as intended. The atmosphere was electric with the interplay of fear, loyalty, and the unspoken awareness that the wrong action could unravel not just a garment but the intricate web of power surrounding the Queen. It was a space where intellect and artistry collided, where human ambition intersected with historical destiny. Beyond the physical construction, the dress carried a psychological weight. Cleopatra's enemies, even those unaware of the coded symbols, were subtly influenced by its presence. Its bearskin texture, commanding yet elegant, radiated authority. The Queen's deliberate choices, how the dress draped, the colors it contrasted with, the faint glimmer of hidden embellishments, were calculated to convey strength and perfection. Those who observed her wearing it could sense the layers of meaning, the unspoken warnings, and the inescapable control she wielded. The dress communicated silently, delivering a message of power as absolute as it was enigmatic. Even among allies, the dress's hidden language created tension. Some courtiers interpreted symbols incorrectly, misreading subtle cues and risking offense or misunderstanding. This uncertainty reinforced Cleopatra's dominance, reminding all who watched that knowledge and perception were controlled by her alone. Every gesture, every glance, every step she took while adorned in the bearskin dress became part of the ongoing performance of authority. The dress was a silent agent, an invisible strategist, and a protective shield for the Queen's most intimate plans. In the chamber, whispers of betrayal began to circulate. A single artisan, perhaps tempted by greed or ambition, could exploit the secrets embedded in the dress for personal gain. Suspicion hung in the air like smoke, intangible but persistent. The artisans, aware of these potential fractures, worked with meticulous care, constantly vigilant for signs of treachery among themselves. Loyalty was not assumed, it was earned in silence and maintained through diligence. The chamber was a crucible where human ambition, fear, and skill converged, creating a tension that was as tangible as the materials being manipulated. The combination of artistry and secrecy reached its apex when the final motifs were applied. The bearskin dress, now complete, was more than a work of craftsmanship, it was a codified map of power, a silent chronicle of alliances and betrayals, a warning to enemies and a signal to the faithful. Its creation was both triumph and danger, a testament to human skill and a reminder of the fragility of trust. Every stitch contained the weight of consequence, every symbol a potential revelation or a hidden trap. Historians suggest that this meticulous embedding of codes may explain why the dress, and the chamber itself, remained hidden for so long. The night the chamber was sealed has become one of the most enigmatic moments in the history of ancient Egypt, shrouded in shadows and whispered rumors. Local villagers, whose families had lived for generations on the outskirts of Alexandria, would later recount stories of a night when torches flickered unnaturally bright against the desert sands, and distant screams cut through the stillness like jagged knives. Archaeologists and historians pieced together these accounts with fragments of Roman dispatches and forgotten scrolls, revealing a scene that feels less like history and more like a suspenseful thriller unfolding beneath the earth. It was on this night that the fate of Thalia, the master artisan of Cleopatra's legendary bearskin dress, became irreversibly intertwined with the mysteries of power, secrecy, and betrayal. Thalia's life had always been cloaked in secrecy. Even her closest apprentices had little understanding of the magnitude of her work, let alone the dangerous significance of the dress she was commissioned to create. The bearskin garment was no ordinary cloak, it was a tapestry of political symbolism, spiritual ritual, and coded messages that only a handful of the Queen's inner circle could decipher. The creation of such an artifact demanded meticulous attention, rare materials, and the unwavering discretion of every hand involved. Thalia, whose skill had been honed since childhood, was both honored and terrified by this task. She had been warned of the consequences of failure, not just to herself, but to those who dared approach the Queen's secrets. That evening, the sky hung low and heavy with clouds, a prelude to a storm that seemed almost intentional, as if nature itself sought to obscure the events about to unfold. Thalia entered the chamber beneath Alexandria, a concealed network of tunnels known only to a select few. Her footsteps echoed faintly against the stone, and she carried with her the last fragments of the bear hide, which had been imported secretly from the northern territories. The hide itself was unusual, almost otherworldly in texture, with hairs that shimmered in the torchlight, suggesting a creature that had once roamed forests far from the Mediterranean coast. Every inch of the chamber had been prepared for this night, pigments crushed, dyes blended, and looms aligned in precise geometrical patterns. The air smelled faintly of resin and iron, a scent that would linger for centuries, as if time itself had been impregnated with the night's secrets. Then the men arrived. Roman informants, disguised as laborers, had somehow infiltrated the chamber. Whether they were aware of the dress's symbolic significance or simply obeying orders from a distant authority, their presence introduced an immediate tension. Witnesses would later describe a strange choreography, men moving silently, yet with lethal intent, while Thalia continued her work, oblivious to the magnitude of the threat that surrounded her. Torchlight danced on the walls, casting shifting shadows that transformed ordinary tools into grotesque figures. Every movement, every glance, carried weight, as if the chamber itself were holding its breath, anticipating a moment of irreversible consequence. The confrontation, though never fully documented, is partially reconstructed from fragments of papyri and oral histories. One elder claimed to have seen figures moving beneath the chamber doors, their forms blurred by distance and fear. Another spoke of the sound of metal against metal, chains, perhaps, or the striking of implements meant to enforce silence. It is here that historians diverge. Some argue that Thalia was forcibly taken, never to be seen again. Others suggest she may have hidden in a concealed niche within the chamber, her survival dependent on the darkness and ingenuity of her hands. Yet all accounts agree on one chilling detail, a scream, sudden and sharp, echoing as if it had been captured by the stones themselves. As the night progressed, the chamber's secrets became increasingly perilous. Thalia had anticipated surveillance but not open confrontation. Every stroke of her brush, every thread placed upon the loom, risked exposure. She may have attempted to encode a final message within the dress's pattern, a warning, a plea, or even a subtle rebellion against the unseen forces that sought to control her and the queen alike. The bearskin garment, once intended as a symbol of power, had become a shield and a confession, a tangible record of resistance crafted under duress. Modern investigators examining the chamber note that the edges of the hide show signs of hurried manipulation, as though someone had tried to preserve its secrets while fleeing an immediate threat. The final moments of that night are the most enigmatic. Witnesses report torches extinguishing in a synchronized manner, plunging the chamber into darkness, only to be relit hours later by those who came to seal the entrances. The sound of stone being shifted, heavy slabs sliding into place, and the final echoes of human presence have been preserved in the architecture itself. Archaeologists, scanning the chamber today, find anomalies, depressions in the floor that suggest concealed passageways, faint handprints pressed into plaster, and scorch marks from torches whose flames were never entirely accounted for. One particularly small handprint, too delicate to belong to an adult, raises haunting questions about who, or what, may have been hidden alongside Thalia, silently witnessing the events as they unfolded. What happened next is a matter of conjecture. Roman records hint at swift executions, secret arrests, and the obliteration of evidence, yet no definitive proof links these actions directly to the chamber or to Thalia. Some scholars posit that Cleopatra herself may have intervened, perhaps to protect her artisan or to ensure that the symbolism embedded in the dress remained hidden from prying eyes. Others argue that Thalia's disappearance was an act of political convenience, an unfortunate casualty in the intricate chess game between queen and empire. The tension lingers because each possibility carries weight, and each answer leads only to another layer of mystery. The psychological impact of that night extends beyond the disappearance itself. The chamber, once a place of creativity and craft, became a tomb of uncertainty. Every artifact recovered centuries later, pigments, tools, fragments of sketches, carries the imprint of fear, defiance, and urgency. The air trapped within the sealed chamber holds stories of whispered plans and desperate measures, waiting to be decoded by those willing to brave the shadows of history. Each item offers a clue, yet none fully resolves the question: did Thalia survive, or was she a casualty of political machinations too vast for one artisan to escape? The ambiguity itself has become part of the legend, drawing historians and enthusiasts alike into a slow-burning narrative of suspense and speculation. In reconstructing this night, the documentary invites viewers to step into the chamber themselves. They are urged to feel the weight of the torches, to hear the echoes of hurried footsteps, to imagine the fear and determination etched into every movement. The tension is layered, the immediate danger, the political stakes, and the personal courage of a woman who dared to create beauty in a world ruled by power and paranoia. As the night reaches its zenith, the audience is left with the ultimate cliffhanger, a chamber sealed not just by stone, but by centuries of unanswered questions, where the truth of that night remains just out of reach, lingering in the shadows and in the imagination of those who dare to uncover it. The night the chamber was sealed was more than an historical event, it was a crucible of human ambition, fear, and secrecy. It encapsulates the fragile boundary between creation and destruction, between loyalty and survival. It is a story where every detail matters, where every fragment of evidence whispers of lives intertwined with destiny, and where the silence of the stone speaks louder than any written record. And even now, nearly 2 millennia later, the chamber waits, silent yet eloquent, daring the brave to uncover what truly transpired in the darkness beneath the sands of Alexandria. Cleopatra's life in the months following the disappearance of Thalia was shrouded in increasing paranoia and isolation. The queen, already burdened by the constant threats of Roman political machinations and the fragility of her alliances, now faced the invisible weight of a secret that had grown too dangerous to ignore. Every decision she made carried more than the usual political consequence, it carried the potential to unravel not just her kingdom, but the delicate web of loyalty she had cultivated over decades. Her advisors, once confident in her judgment, now whispered in corridors, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid that their words might carry consequences as lethal as the daggers rumored to stalk the palace at night. This section of the story seeks to humanize Cleopatra, stripping away the myth of the seductress and revealing the vulnerable, strategic, and sometimes desperate ruler beneath. Ancient accounts, often biased and fragmented, portray a woman caught between survival and ambition, whose brilliance was shadowed by the constant fear of betrayal. The psychological toll of secrecy weighed heavily upon her. She had entrusted Thalia with the creation of the bearskin dress, a garment whose significance went beyond mere opulence. It was a coded message, a symbol of defiance against the expanding Roman authority. And now, with Thalia gone, Cleopatra faced the haunting possibility that her message, her rebellion, and her trust might have been exposed to enemies she could neither predict nor control. Historians suggest that Cleopatra's interactions during this period became increasingly calculated, almost mechanical. Public appearances were carefully staged, her gestures, words, and expressions were crafted to project authority while concealing fear. Private moments, however, tell a different story. Letters and scraps of papyrus discovered in hidden caches hint at sleepless nights, anxiety, and a constant weighing of trust and suspicion. In them, she speaks cryptically of loyalty and betrayal, sometimes referencing artisans and servants in ways that suggest she believed some of them had knowledge that could jeopardize her reign. These documents reveal a woman who is not only politically shrewd but profoundly aware of her mortality and the fragility of her position. Cleopatra's relationship with Thalia, though largely speculative, adds an emotional layer to the narrative. The queen had placed immense faith in the artisan, not just as a skilled craftswoman but as a keeper of secrets, a collaborator in a subtle but powerful rebellion. Their interactions, reconstructed through fragments of correspondence and secondary accounts, suggest a bond formed in mutual understanding and unspoken trust. Cleopatra's anxiety over Thalia's disappearance was compounded by guilt and fear, guilt for involving an innocent life in political intrigue, and fear that the absence of her artisan might expose hidden plans to those who would seize the opportunity for ruthless gain. The queen's paranoia during this period was not unfounded. Rome's shadow loomed ever larger over Egypt, and spies, informants, and opportunists circulated freely. Cleopatra had reason to suspect that even her closest confidants might act in self-interest, either to curry favor with Roman authorities or to protect themselves from the consequences of association with the queen's clandestine activities. This delicate tension, between loyalty and survival, permeated the palace. Every gesture, every conversation was scrutinized, filtered through layers of strategy and suspicion. Cleopatra's brilliance was matched only by the constant vigilance required to maintain control over both information and perception, over truth and deception alike. Amidst this backdrop of fear and political maneuvering, Cleopatra continued to assert her influence through subtle means. The bearskin dress, unfinished and now the source of dangerous speculation, remained central to her symbolic strategy. Some scholars theorize that she used rumors of its creation and disappearance as a psychological tool, spreading selective stories to unsettle allies and enemies alike. It was both a weapon and a shield, embodying the tension between visibility and concealment, between revelation and secrecy. The queen's understanding of perception and manipulation demonstrates not only political cunning but also a deep awareness of human psychology, an ability to turn fear into leverage, to use ambiguity as a tool in a deadly game of power. The emotional weight of this period is crucial to understanding Cleopatra not merely as a figure of legend but as a human being navigating extraordinary pressures. Her anxiety over Thalia's fate, combined with the strategic implications of the bearskin dress, paints a portrait of a ruler balancing personal attachment with the ruthless demands of survival. Each night brought uncertainty. Had her secrets been compromised? Could the queen continue to control the narrative of her reign? These questions, unanswered and persistent, created a psychological tension that echoes through history, leaving modern observers with the haunting impression of a woman perpetually poised between triumph and catastrophe. As the narrative progresses toward the next stages of discovery, this portrait of Cleopatra lays the groundwork for the convergence of political intrigue, personal loss, and artistic legacy. The queen's anxiety, her meticulous attention to detail, and her emotional investment in the fate of Thalia's work all foreshadow the revelations that will surface when archaeologists, centuries later, uncover the chamber and its artifacts. By understanding the queen's internal struggles, the audience is better equipped to grasp the stakes, the suspense, and the human dimensions of a story that has been veiled in myth, rumor, and secrecy for nearly 2,000 years. The night of Thalia's disappearance, and the weeks and months that followed, transformed Cleopatra's reign into a landscape of shadow and tension. Every decision carried consequences that extended beyond the present, rippling forward into history itself. In exploring her psychological state during this period, we gain insight not only into her motivations but also into the broader context of survival and secrecy in a world dominated by power, betrayal, and the ever-present threat of annihilation. Cleopatra's story is inseparable from the chamber and its lost treasures. The human and historical stakes are one and the same. By delving into her fears, her strategy, and her emotional vulnerability, the audience is drawn deeper into the suspenseful narrative, left wondering, who truly controlled the fate of the queen, and who controlled the fate of those she trusted most. As the centuries passed, the chamber beneath Alexandria remained undisturbed, a time capsule sealed in secrecy, guarding its truths and lies in equal measure. Yet the Romans, meticulous record-keepers even in the most obscure corners of their empire, left traces of a story that slowly began to emerge through fragmented military logs, suppressed correspondences, and carefully hidden decrees. Modern historians, working like detectives across millennia, began piecing these fragments together, revealing a shadow war between empire and artisan, between power and secrecy, that had long been buried beneath the sands. It became increasingly clear that Thalia's disappearance was no isolated incident but part of a calculated Roman effort to control, co-opt, and, if necessary, erase those who might threaten their hegemony. Roman military operations, coded and bureaucratically exact, often mentioned the elimination of key individuals whose influence could inspire rebellion. In the context of Alexandria, these records take on a chilling clarity. Artisans, scribes, and even minor court functionaries were scrutinized for potential subversive activity. Among them, the master artisans tasked with creating symbolic garments for Cleopatra were singled out. The bearskin dress, far more than an object of luxury, represented coded defiance. Roman administrators recognized its power, not only as an artistic expression but as a subtle act of sovereignty capable of rallying factions loyal to the queen and antagonistic to Rome. That recognition may have sealed Thalia's fate, transforming her from a celebrated craftsman into a target of imperial eradication. One of the most haunting discoveries comes from a set of Roman orders, heavily redacted and partially burned over centuries, referring to the removal of those who thread rebellion into fur. The phrasing is cryptic but deliberate. Scholars argue that the fur is almost certainly a reference to the bearskin garment, while the threading is both literal and metaphorical, the weaving of loyalty, the embedding of secret messages, and the subtle reinforcement of political allegiance. The orders themselves are chilling in their ambiguity. They convey authority, control, and, most importantly, the absence of mercy. To the Romans, these artisans were not merely employees, they were threats, capable of shaping perception, loyalty, and potentially, the course of history itself. Reconstructing the Roman operation requires careful cross-referencing of texts, archaeology, and even forensic evidence from the chamber itself. When investigators first entered the underground workshop in modern times, they noticed anomalies consistent with a sudden evacuation or violent intrusion. Tools were abandoned mid-process, pigments spilled as though startled from their containment, and the bare hide, meticulously preserved, bore evidence of hurried manipulation. These clues suggest that the Romans, or agents acting under their orders, did not simply remove Thalia discreetly, they executed an operation that was both swift and deliberate, leaving behind just enough evidence to hint at the truth without revealing it fully. Every item, every mark, is a trace of tension frozen in time. Further insight comes from comparative study of Roman suppression techniques in other provinces. Rome routinely employed invisible punishments, removal without trial, erasure from official records, and public rumor used to control perception without creating martyrs. Thalia fits this pattern perfectly. Her existence was acknowledged only faintly in fragments of texts, her name disappears entirely from official annals shortly after her final commission. Yet her work, the dress itself, persisted as a symbol, a ghost of resistance, encoded with messages that would remain inscrutable for nearly 2,000 years. In this way, Rome's attempt to control history inadvertently preserved it, leaving a breadcrumb trail that modern investigators could follow. Decoding the chamber itself reveals further layers of Roman strategy. Hidden niches, sealed compartments, and carefully placed obstructions indicate that the space was deliberately prepared for concealment, or containment. Ancient engineers understood the importance of both function and misdirection. Some compartments appear designed to protect materials, others seem intended to obscure or intimidate any intruders who might stumble upon the chamber. The handprints pressed into plaster, the scorch marks of abandoned torches, and the unusual layering of dust and debris all suggest an interaction that was both practical and psychological. Whoever entered that night, whether as guardian or intruder, understood that controlling information was as crucial as controlling the artisans themselves. The investigation also sheds light on the broader political stakes. Cleopatra, far from being a passive figure in these events, was acutely aware of the threat Rome posed to her artisans and her court. It is plausible that she tried to shield Thalia through secrecy and misdirection, even as Rome closed in. The balance of power was fragile, a single misstep could cost lives, destabilize the throne, and render years of strategic effort meaningless. The dress, in this sense, became a nexus where political intrigue, artistic genius, and personal loyalty collided. It was more than a garment, it was a silent battlefield on which the fates of Thalia, Cleopatra, and the empire itself were contested. Evidence recovered from Roman records also hints at the fate of the missing artisan. One dispatch, partially burned but legible enough to decipher, mentions a confiscated object, described only as the hide of the northern beast, stained with royal intent. The phrasing is cryptic yet evocative, linking the bearskin garment directly to the artisan's disappearance. It implies that Rome recognized not only the political but also the symbolic potency of the dress. Every detail, the origin of the hide, the manner of its preparation, the secretive patterns woven into its fibers, was considered a potential threat. To modern observers, these fragments serve as both tantalizing clues and a haunting reminder of the stakes faced by those who dared defy imperial authority. By piecing together these elements, a picture emerges of a carefully orchestrated campaign: artisans selected for elimination, workshops surveilled, communications intercepted, and artifacts confiscated. Yet, paradoxically, this Roman attention ensured the preservation of certain truths. The very efforts to erase history created a breadcrumb trail for modern investigators, allowing contemporary audiences to glimpse the interplay of power, secrecy, and artistry that defined this pivotal moment. Each fragment, each trace, each encoded pattern in the chamber is a testament to the risks Thalia and others took, and the lengths to which empires will go to suppress ideas they cannot tolerate. As this section closes, the tension is palpable. We see a civilization capable of monumental conquest, yet terrified of the subtlest act of defiance. We see the human cost of political ambition: an artisan vanished, a queen anxious and calculating, and a chamber sealed with secrets that would outlast generations. The audience is left with a haunting question: in a world where power dictates survival, can creativity and loyalty truly endure? And if they do, what truths remain hidden, waiting for centuries to be unearthed? The chamber, frozen in time, preserves these questions with eerie clarity, inviting historians, archaeologists, and viewers alike to step into a story that blends intrigue, artistry, and human courage on a scale rarely documented in history. The reconstruction of the bearskin dress became more than an archaeological endeavor; it transformed into a journey across time, a meticulous unraveling of artistry, secrecy, and the whispers of history. Modern investigators, armed with Thalia's sketches, fragments of pigments, and remnants of her tools, began the painstaking task of piecing together not just a garment but a narrative encoded in every thread. Each stitch, every fold, was examined with obsessive precision. It was quickly evident that this dress was more than clothing; it was a statement, a manifesto woven into fur, a coded testament to the queen's influence and to Thalia's courage in crafting it under unimaginable pressure. The dress itself demanded materials nearly impossible to obtain today, and nearly impossible to acquire even in the ancient world. Bear hides from northern territories had to be imported clandestinely, their transport an intricate logistical operation involving traders, envoys, and secretive couriers. The hides carried more than physical substance; they carried stories of conquest, survival, and the tension between nature and human ambition. When Thalia had handled these materials, she imbued them with her skill and understanding of symbolism. Every cut was precise, every contour was designed to evoke power, reverence, and mystery. Modern investigators marveled at the complexity, realizing that the dress was not simply meant to be seen but to communicate, its language subtle, sophisticated, and intentionally opaque. Beyond the tangible materials, the dress incorporated pigments that had been crushed and prepared with ritualistic care. Reds derived from rare insects, blues from lapis lazuli imported across deserts and mountains, and gold threads woven to catch light at precise angles, each element was designed to encode meaning. In reconstructing these techniques, archaeologists began to understand the dual nature of the dress: functional and symbolic, aesthetic and political. Thalia's genius lay not only in her craftsmanship but in her ability to embed layers of meaning into a physical object. Every detail carried intent, from the direction of the fur to the arrangement of hidden symbols, and modern examination revealed patterns that might have been missed even by those who originally wore or commissioned it. As the dress slowly took form in modern times, the team uncovered a series of hidden messages encoded within its folds. Certain seams, when examined in a particular light, revealed geometric patterns that corresponded to the lunar calendar, clues to timing, ritual, and perhaps even prophecy. Others contain subtle signs familiar to those versed in rebel symbols of the period. Each discovery added a layer of suspense. Was Thalia attempting to communicate beyond the constraints of her immediate environment, leaving behind knowledge that could survive even her disappearance? And if so, who was meant to decode it? The answer remained tantalizingly out of reach, a ghostly echo of an ancient dialogue between artisan and queen, hidden in plain sight within the architecture of the garment. The process of reconstruction also revealed the intense psychological weight carried by Thalia. Evidence of hurried strokes, asymmetrical stitching in places where precision would otherwise dominate, suggested moments of fear or urgency. Scholars postulate that she may have been aware of impending surveillance or even direct threat. The dress thus becomes a diary of sorts, recording emotions, decisions, and acts of quiet rebellion. Each fiber tells a story, each stain and imperfection a testament to human vulnerability in the face of omnipotent power. The audience is drawn into the tension. Here is an object of beauty, painstakingly created, yet haunted by danger and secrecy. It is art as survival, as message, as protest. The narrative deepens when a small pocket is discovered, ingeniously concealed within the folds of the garment. Inside lies a symbol etched into a piece of parchment, tiny, almost imperceptible, yet deliberate. Upon examination, it matches the small handprint previously found on the chamber wall, a clue overlooked for centuries. The implication is staggering. Thalia left a deliberate trace of herself, her presence, her story embedded within the very artifact that could serve as her undoing. It is a message to those who might discover the dress centuries later, a whisper across time, a connection between artisan and observer that transcends history. This discovery raises questions of intent, legacy, and the enduring human need to communicate beyond immediate danger. In tandem with these findings, historians explore the cultural and political symbolism encoded in the garment. The bearskin itself evokes power, dominance, and the raw force of nature, qualities associated with sovereignty and authority in the ancient world. By wearing the dress, Cleopatra was not merely adorning herself, she was signaling strength, subtly challenging Roman encroachment, and aligning herself with a mythology of survival and conquest. The dress was a silent, coded statement of rebellion, and Thalia was both its creator and its secretive co-conspirator. The reconstruction process reveals the dress as a dynamic artifact, one that was intended to interact with perception, influence emotion, and command attention through both spectacle and secrecy. Emotional resonance emerges as the team considers Thalia's risk. Crafting a garment of such symbolic power under the watchful eyes of Rome placed her life in peril. Every decision, every thread, every hidden seam, was a negotiation between obedience, creativity, and survival. Scholars speculate that Thalia encoded messages not only to preserve her artistry but to communicate resistance, loyalty, or warning to the queen or perhaps to factions outside Alexandria. The dress, therefore, is more than a historical object, it is a narrative, a psychological testament, a bridge between fear and courage. The tension of its creation mirrors the tension of the political landscape, precarious, fraught, and intensely human. The reconstruction culminates in a revelation that reshapes understanding of both Thalia and Cleopatra. By examining the completed garment in its entirety, investigators notice a pattern of alignment between its symbols and celestial events, ancient rituals, lunar cycles, and seasonal markers. The dress is simultaneously a work of art and a functional calendar, a coded message to those who could read it. It demonstrates the sophistication of ancient knowledge and the deliberate intention to embed multiple layers of meaning. For modern audiences, it provides a moment of suspense and awe. The dress is not merely beautiful or politically potent, it is a multidimensional artifact, containing secrets that even today continue to challenge interpretation. Finally, the reconstructed dress becomes the narrative fulcrum linking past and present. It is the tangible bridge between Thalia, Cleopatra, and the audience, embodying risk, secrecy, artistry, and political defiance. Each observation, each discovery, amplifies the suspense of the story. What did the dress signify? Who was meant to understand its message? And what truths remain hidden in the folds of history, waiting to be uncovered? The audience is left with a sense of awe, tension, and emotional connection, fully immersed in the intertwined legacies of the Queen, her artisan, and the enigmatic chamber that has preserved their story for nearly 2 millennia. The chamber beneath Alexandria, sealed for nearly 2 millennia, reveals itself as more than a workspace. It is a vault of secrets, a silent witness to power, artistry, and the fragility of human life. Archaeologists entering its confines for the first time in centuries are struck not only by the physical remnants of tools, pigments, and the bare-skin hide but by the weight of history itself. Every corner, every scarred wall, and every shadowed niche seems imbued with a story that resists explanation, defies simple reconstruction, and leaves investigators questioning the motives and fates of those who once inhabited this hidden world. The chamber's silence is profound, yet paradoxically it speaks volumes, echoing the tension, fear, and loyalty that permeated the final days of Thalia and the Queen who commissioned her work. Inside the chamber, every artifact and trace of activity is analyzed with painstaking care. Pigments still cling stubbornly to stone surfaces, looms remain aligned in cryptic arrangements, and fragments of Thalia's sketches hint at intricate designs, unfinished yet deliberate. For the first time, the narrative begins to coalesce. This was not merely a workshop but a carefully controlled environment, engineered to preserve secrecy and protect knowledge too dangerous to reveal. It becomes apparent that the chamber was both a sanctuary and a trap, a place where the artistic genius of Thalia intersected with the political cunning of Cleopatra, and where the stakes of failure were literal, not metaphorical. The final chapter of this story focuses on the convergence of evidence, history, and imagination, acknowledging that certainty is elusive. Multiple theories attempt to explain Thalia's disappearance. One proposes that she was executed or forcibly removed by Roman agents, her knowledge deemed too dangerous to survive. Another suggests that she may have hidden within secret niches of the chamber, possibly surviving for a time while leaving coded messages in her work. A third possibility, perhaps the most haunting, is that she sacrificed herself to protect the dress, embedding the last of her knowledge and intent into the garment and chamber itself, ensuring that its secrets would endure even if she did not. Each scenario carries weight, yet none can be confirmed definitively, leaving the audience suspended between speculation and the eerie finality of the unknown. What emerges clearly, however, is the profound relationship between creator and patron. Cleopatra, navigating the deadly political landscape of her time, relied on Thalia not merely for craftsmanship but as a confidant and co-conspirator in a subtle resistance. The Queen's fingerprints, both literal and figurative, are present in the hidden folds of the chamber and the carefully preserved dress. Scholars examine scraps of papyrus, faded ink, and partial inscriptions to understand her role. There is evidence of both protection and complicity, a recognition that while Thalia's survival might have been desirable, the preservation of the dress's symbolic message was paramount. The Queen's decisions are both strategic and human, revealing vulnerability, ambition, and a profound understanding of the stakes at play. The chamber itself, a labyrinth of concealment, holds additional clues that deepen the suspense. Hidden compartments, previously unnoticed cracks, and carefully arranged artifacts suggest deliberate choices made under duress. Archaeologists find scorch marks in places that indicate torches extinguished or replaced hastily, footprints in dust that cannot be fully accounted for, and impressions in plaster that suggest human presence beyond what would be expected for a single artisan. These physical traces become more than mere objects of curiosity, they are pieces of a narrative puzzle, echoing the tension and fear of a night that shaped history. Each discovery amplifies the emotional resonance, connecting modern investigators to individuals whose fates were determined by forces both visible and unseen.